I see the same team on defense. Certainly the part of the defense that's most damaging to the offense, obviously, is the front four and really front eight, and they're doing a good job there. They're finding a way in the back end to try to, eliminate the big plays. And, when I watch them play, I still see a hard defense to score against. And then on offense, I huge respect for Carson Wentz. It all runs through him. And, I feel like they're just a play or two away from doing the things that they want to do. So, aside from that, what I remember is when we played them last, and, that's the one game that got away from us this year, and we didn't do anything well enough to win, and we faced a good team early in the year that took advantage of it and kicked their tail.
Did you see the same types of things when you watched their tape against the Saints on Sunday?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Did you see the same type of, things that you were talking about when you watched the game against the Saints?
Yeah, and you know what? No matter, two very high-quality teams played each other that night. And we've all been on teams that have won a lot of games during the season where a game or two gets away from you. And, that's sort of the way I look at it. The game kind of got away from the Eagles. They were playing a really good team at home. They took advantage of it. And, it's no different than losing by a point. I'm sure their focus is to get back to doing what they do best and do it against us.
Hey, Pat, you've found a way. Seems like you found the right formula to use Saquon Barkley and also Odell Beckham. Can you talk about maybe how you kind of running the attack out of Barkley now?
Yeah, I think it's always important to run the ball, and we obviously have an outstanding young running back, and it's important he gets his touches, and he'll get over 20 touches a game, whether it's catching a pass or running the ball. We happened to run it the other day. He had 27 rushes, which is probably his high for the year. But that was the way the game was playing out as well. So there have been other games where, he's going to touch the ball, probably run the ball close to 20 and then maybe have 6 or 8 more catches. So, I hate the whole idea of saying so-and-so is going to touch the ball so much, but it just really makes sense for him to have the ball in his hand. And then in terms of Odell, same thing. It's important that he touches the ball. Now, teams do things to take him away. We faced it the last time we faced the Eagles. They paid special attention to him, whether they were playing man. They used Malcolm to double him, and when they were playing zone, they'd cloud him up. And so, we need to be aware of that too, but still find ways for him to touch the ball. And that's why it's important. The rest of the guys on our roster do their part. I think 9 different receivers touched the ball last week, and if I guess I was coaching in a perfect world, I think that's the way it should be. That way, everybody gets their touches, everybody gets their production, and the 2 guys that you mentioned get most of it.
Pat, you've gone up against the Jim Schwartz defense many years in this league, and you're talking about the job he did last time. What stands out when you watch him week to week? Is it the variety? What is it about his scheme?
Well, they change it up each week. Against us, they played a lot of split shell, zone. It was on a short week. Last week they played a boatload of man against New Orleans, and then they've covered down somewhere in between. The constant, obviously, is the pass rush. So whatever you choose to do throwing the ball, you better be timely, or or bad things happen. And so, that's sort of what I see from him.
What's the value of having a running back like Saquon who can touch the ball like 20, 25 times a game, whether it's, out of the backfield, whether it's running the ball or catching passes, as opposed to, let's say, like a running back by committee type of thing?
Yeah, I think it works. I do think it takes a village. Obviously he's kind of our lead back right now, but we have other guys we'll put in there and get some production. So I do think, it takes a village. And again, it just goes back to using the talent that you have available. If you've got a really good player at one position, you tend to use them more. If you've got, good players at one position and you got multiple, then you spread the ball around. I think that just makes sense. That's what we do is offensive guys. Just try to make sure you utilize the talent that you have.
Hey, Pat, you've been an offensive coordinator that did not call plays. You've employed offensive coordinators that did not call plays. What's the role of the offensive coordinator in that setup when you're not calling plays?
Well, I've done it. To your point, I've done it. So when I was there with Chip, along as we went along, we put together really an NFL version of what was his, college offense. So you help with the design of things. On game day, you help suggest plays. Typically, the play call will say, "Hey, listen, it's 2nd and 10. Have a 3rd and 5 call ready for me." So there's the suggestion piece of it. I'm very fortunate here with Mike Shula. I mean, he's called plays for many years. He did it in a Super Bowl, and he was a quarterback, which I'm fond of coordinators that were quarterbacks, and so he has a feel for Eli and what we want to do. Does an outstanding job of directing the staff, so I don't feel like I need to be in there. In fact, he could run it if he had to. And then the game day suggestion piece. The play calling thing is one thing, but the role of the offensive coordinator is huge, just like it is for the defensive coordinator.
Coach, I know you're aware of what Odell said a couple of weeks ago about his goal to win out. What have you made of the NFC East this year? Why do you think it's so wide open at this point, and what do you think your chances are to win it?
Yeah, I don't know. Other than the fact I'm a football fan, I don't take that broad a view of it. I try to stay in the moment, get ready to play Philly, a team that kicked our tail the last time. So, I don't know. And I was always better at English than math, so I'm not going to add these things up until the end. I remember the one year in Philly there, and you guys all remember it. I'm forgetting what year it was, but we're playing Dallas, right? And all Dallas had to do was win, and they're in. But we had to have like 3 things happen. And I can remember we ended up beating Dallas, and then those 3 things happened, and we're in the playoffs. So you never know. You really never know. And that was one of those years where, we didn't know what was going to happen. So that's why you just keep playing it out. I feel like, the NFC East is a very competitive division, and each game, doesn't really matter about the records, and most of the records are pretty close. Each game could go either way.
Are you expecting a desperate Eagles team on Sunday?
No, I'm expecting an Eagles team that's going to try to come back from a loss last week. I'm expecting an Eagles team that's going to play their best football.
Hey Pat, when you're facing a team that has so many injuries at one position, how much of an effort do you make to target that position as a play caller?
Yeah, we always go in with an idea. These are just hear this out. We as coaches, we always go in with an idea of areas or people that we want to attack. That's just standard operating procedure, and that's the tactics of the game. And then sometimes it plays out that way. Sometimes the team knows that's happening, and so they tweak something to make that guy less of a target. And sometimes, it works out where you go after the guy, and the guy plays better than you thought. So those are the tactics. Those are the things that, we work on behind the scenes. And then when you put it out on the field, sometimes it works out the way you think, and sometimes it doesn't.
Hey, what have you liked about Quadri Henderson as a returner? He's kind of local for us.
Yeah, Quadri, we really didn't have the return game the way we wanted it to start the year roster-wise, and he was an outstanding returner in college, and so we brought him here based on that, and he's developed over time into a pretty fine punt returner. He was doing the kickoffs until we had Corey Coleman go back there, and so it's much like our team. Our team is morphing. There's 37 players on our 53-man roster that were not on this team a year ago. It's got to be a league high, I would imagine. Yeah. We felt like we needed to do that. We felt like we needed to inject some youth and some new things to change what was going on. And along the way, we've made more changes. And he was sort of a mid-season change that, is getting better each week.
Hey, Pat, what have you done? Your offensive line seems so much better than it was earlier in the season. I know you've made some personnel changes there. What's been the key to getting that group together?
Well, both. There's two things. I can't. That's an unmistakable voice. Was that Les?
Yeah, it's me. Yes.
Yeah.
How are you, Pat?
All right. Good. No. Well, a couple things. Number one, the O-line we're playing with now, 4 of these guys weren't on the team a year ago. And Chad Wheeler, the 5th guy, was a backup. Well, that's first off. And based on the way we started, Pat Omame is no longer here. He's with Jacksonville. And Eric Flowers is no longer here. He's with Jacksonville. And so, we've made changes there. We picked up Jamon Brown. He's played right guard and done a really good job for us. And then the guys that we brought in are playing better together. So, as we all know, the offensive line is a coordinated effort. The longer a group of 5 men can play together, the better they'll get. And fortunately for us, their 2 best efforts were our last 2 games. And, that's where it starts. This is not news. I've told the O-line all along, and it's the cross they bear. It's the reason they all go to dinner and talk about the coach is, we're going to go as far as they're going to block for us, and I think it always starts up front. It's no mystery that when your O-line plays better, the skill players get to do what they do better.
Hey, Pat, you have some experience with a quarterback coming off a torn ACL. In looking at Carson this year, how do you think he's recovered from that, and how long does it usually take for that quarterback to be back to the player they were?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I do know this. I think he's playing at a high level. It looks by the way he moves around that it's not an issue for him. He's just beyond a year out, I think, right, from his injury.
A little less than a year out, yeah.
So he's bordering on a year out from his injury. Usually in that first year, there's little things you might think about. I don't necessarily recognize it on film. And as he gets further and further away from the injury and the surgery, it'll even get better. But there's no question in my mind that he's capable of playing at a high level.
Hey, thanks, Pat.
Thanks a lot, Pat. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you guys Sunday.